Hello and welcome to GTO Coach and Go. I'm Jim Dellerman with Group Travel Odyssey. I want to welcome you today and I want to thank you for joining us again. Before we get started with today's topic, I do want to remind you, if you've not done so yet, if you're watching us on YouTube, go and hit that subscribe button down below. Also, if you ring the bell, you'll be notified anytime that we have new content on our YouTube channel. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn at Group Travel Odyssey, and you can also like our Facebook page. We've got a lot of great social media posts that we put on there. We've got some great content in our YouTube channel as well, so make sure you follow along with that. Today, we've got a really great topic. We talk a lot of times when we're doing demonstrations and we're training everybody on the system about automations and notifications. And there are ways that we can set things up for your company so that way it runs behind the scenes and there are certain notifications, there are different automations that can happen, again, automatically. That kind of gives the name of it. But instead of me rambling on about it, let me bring on our director of GTO. Here is Kory Vries. Kory, let's get him here. Hey, Kory, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Jim?
I'm doing very well. Doing very well. As I was saying, we're going to be talking about automations and notifications, and it's one of the things that we talk about frequently when we're bringing people on a system, but we don't necessarily hear back from a lot of people as to things that they would like to have put in for notifications or any automations that they would like. So, I figured we would get you on today. We will go through and talk about some of the features, some of the things that we can automate within our system, and some of the activities and notifications that can happen as well that will make everybody's life a little bit easier. So take it away, Kory.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about GTO that we sort of forget sometimes, especially when we're onboarding new people are coming on. We just need to get them utilizing the system. There's so many things to think about because GTO is not just software, right? It's sort of a defining choice that you've made by going with GTO, right? You have to sort of rethink your company in a different way in a lot of cases, and for the better, not for the worse. Not like your old way of doing things, you sort of want to let go because a lot of the things that you do in your process, you don't have to do anymore. We can automate them. We can give you notifications to them. We can set you up for success to help your sales flow, to help your operations flow. But a lot of it has to do with what you want then to do. So you have choices. We can customize these things for you. And if you're going to think about business without boundaries, you have to start thinking not just in terms of I can do my job from the beach, but also in terms of what could I do to make this job easier for me? Right. And that's what we want to do is we want to in all ways help you kind of move beyond just the box that you might have set yourself in. And we can do that by having notifications, by having automations, and by having activities. So the first thing I want to mention is every app that we have has an activities section. Now, you might hear the term tasks used as well. Activities and tasks are sort of the same thing. So if you use the word task or if you use the word like a calendar, something, it basically tasks, activities are records in a calendar somewhere that says you need to do something on a certain day. That requires you to remember to write all those tasks in. If you just had a blotter calendar on your desk here, you'd have to write all that in. But what if when you did something, it would automatically appear there? Now we're talking about some cool features. So for instance, let's say you wanted to enter in a client, a contact into the system, but you didn't want to reach out to them right now. You just returned from a conference, you got a whole list of people, you enter that contact into sales, and you want to reach out in 3 days. Every time you enter a contact in, 3 days later, you'd like to reach out to them. So great, let's do that. Why don't we make it to where every time you enter a contact in, a notification or a task appears in your task calendar to reach out to that person. So 3 days later, you go to that calendar, bam, there it is for you. You didn't have to hand enter it in. You didn't have to remember who it was. It's right there for you. So that's one of the ways you could do that. Since we don't want to stare at our faces anymore, why don't I went ahead and I selected a PowerPoint presentation, and I want you to know that I don't do PowerPoint presentations very well. So hopefully this will work. I see that it showed up right, but oddly enough, there it is. Okay. So automations and notifications. What are we talking about? Let's talk about those tasks. Changing the way your business thinks. This is the thing. Think about your business differently for just a second. And that's probably part of the problem is you got to take some time to do that. You can't just do it. You have to take time and say, how can I do my business differently? So activities, tasks, they're in every app. Sales, a trip, passenger, they're all there. And so what if you wanted, and these are some ideas for you. So you could think of things that we don't talk about today. Let's talk about them and see what we can do. So let's say there's an activity that's created when you change the status of a trip. Let's say you send a trip to presentation mode. You sent it out to a client. You put it in presentation mode. I think some of our clients, our members, wonder why we have so many statuses, and that's because you can have it do different things at different statuses. So you send it to presentation, and what you want to do is you want to remember to follow up with that teacher, I don't know, 3 days from now. So every time you change the status of a trip into presentation, an activity is created and placed on your calendar to reach out 3 days later. On that third day, when you look at your calendar, there it's going to be. You're not going to forget anybody. Nobody's going to be in the past. The nice thing about activities is they're movable. Move it to a different day. You don't want to do it that day? Just move it to a different day. You don't have to do it that day. It's not like it's set in stone. Move it to another day if you've been swamped by it. Let's say you could do it when you create a product and trip manager. And I know we talk about this every time we train new people because this is a big one that we can do. When you send a trip from sales to operations, and so trip managers now got a hold of it, we can create activities for every product based upon the product type. So let's say you have a set pattern that you want to keep track of as you go through the operations process. So I'll say motor coach. So when you get the trip over into operations, you want to reach out to the motor coach. So you have an activity that automatically creates that says reach out to motor coach and is due that day. Maybe it's due 2 days later, whenever you'd like. Then let's say you have to pay within 30 days of that. You have to pay the deposit within 30 days. I'm making all this up, by the way. Let's say 30 days later, you got to pay a deposit. So what you do is you say, okay, my next task comes 30 days after today, and it's pay that vendor. Let's say 30 days before, you have to reconfirm with that vendor. So 30 days before the trip, we're going to have an activity that says reach out to the bus company and confirm this trip. As long as we have a date and a number of days you want. So if you have an activity that is 45 days from the start of the trip, that's easy. 30 days from now. What we can't do is, well, if it's in September, then we need to have, it's this many days, right? That gets to be a little more complicated, but if you have an anchor date and how many days you want that out from, great, let's do that. I know member companies that have a lot of these. They just automate them all. And it looks very busy when you see them all for the first time, but you don't have to do them all, right? If it doesn't apply to that, just delete it out. A lot of people like to delete out an activity. Instead of not have one there to remind you to do something. That's a big one. You really have to sit down and think about how each product needs to be handled. You could do it from sales manager or when you add a new one in trip manager. I don't know that anybody does that right now. If you add a new product to trip manager, those things don't occur. Like those tasks don't occur if someone's got them set up. But you could. You just have to tell us. You could create it to do an action, such as pay a vendor, right? You enter in a trip product, it's got to get paid. You need to, we could send an activity to someone else. If you've got an accountant that needs to pay it, send the activity to them. We'll create it when it happens. You don't even have to deal with it. It just creates it. They'll know to go pay it. We can do it when you add an account or contact. That's the one we started with first. Is, let's say you add an account and you want to reach out to them, but you don't want to do it today. You want to do it a little while from now. You can automatically do that every time you add a contact or an account. And if you don't want to reach out to them later, delete that activity. And the interesting thing about activities is you can enter your own as well, right? So it's not just they all have to be automated. Enter in the ones you want. Activities are a fabulous way to keep track of what it is you need to do.
If I can interject a second with activities, one of the things that I like with activities as well is I can put an activity in and I can assign it to somebody else on my team. So if it's something that I'm putting in that I need somebody else to do something with, I can create that activity, assign it to them, and then there's a place where it will send a notification to that other person to let them know that there's an activity for them. So it adds it to their calendar. It gives them a notification that that's coming as well. And again, it just makes it easier because these are things that are set up so you don't have to set them up. So it would be there so that way you go ahead and this needs to be assigned to Kory, and Kory would get the notification every time that I do that.
That's right. And then when I look at my calendar that day that it's been assigned to me, I'm going to see it there. It really is. I mean, I say the word game changer a lot. It's just because there is nothing like it that I'm aware of. When you're coming out of a system of FileMaker, or you're coming out of a system of Excel spreadsheets, you just don't have anything like that. And so you've done everything by hand for so long. It's hard to let go of the fact that you don't have to do it that way.
Right.
And it's a great segue, because what you said was, and then you receive a notification. And these notifications are super important. Any member, any user that gets a notification are really glad that they're in notifications. An example of a notification, by the way, is a help desk response. So when you put in a help desk and we do something with it, it notifies you that we've done something, whether we've assigned it or it's changed statuses, whether it's complete. It will send an email with some questions when we remember to put the question in. Some of you will laugh at that because you know that occasionally we say, we have a question, and then we forget to put the question on there. But that's an example of a notification, of one kind of notification out of the system, right? You can send a notification when a trip changes status. You want to know when a trip, let's say you're the manager of a company and you want to know every time a trip gets put into commitment. You can either have them tell you every time a trip is put into commitment, or every time a trip is put into commitment, it can send you a notification saying it is, and you can keep track of it. And the salesperson doesn't have to worry about whether or not they remembered to tell their boss that this trip was sold. Especially if the operations person is not the boss and the boss still wants to know and keep track, right? You can have that done. You could have it when it sets to cancel. It could send a note to everybody, hold up. This trip is being canceled right now. Stop what you're doing on it, right? So anytime a trip changes status, that's in sales or in Trip Manager, right? Any of those times. You just have to decide when and what and who, right? When an activity is due. We have the calendar, but let's say you're so lazy you don't even want to look at the calendar. That's me, by the way. That's me. I don't even want to look at the calendar. So you can get an email every day with a list of your activities. Just go to the email and start working on them, right? That's good. You can do it. You can do a list of activities every day. So if your manager is like, I want to know every completed activity you've done today. Okay, or bi-weekly. You can do by week or by day. Then you can have it sent to your manager. You're like, no more of this justifying what you did. You could show them what you did immediately, like just happens. Get them off your back, I guess what I'm saying. Those managers, they're terrible. But you could have a list of activities sent to you. You could have a list of activities sent to someone else. And it doesn't have to be a list of activities. For instance, it could be a list of trips and a status, right? If you want to email to you a list of every trip that's in pending status, so you know that you'll have to go and do something with them, or in follow-up, if a trip's in follow-up and you need to reach out to those people, why not have all your trips listed in follow-up sent to you every day? That's not a problem, right? I will say that when you do that, though, try to do it company-wide. Decide as a group what you want to do with that, not just as individuals. So like a lot of salespeople out there are not like, yeah, I could really do this, while others are like, no. Decide as a group what you want. That's the best way to go. So you could, when you assign something to someone, we were talking about that earlier, Jim, if you assign something else to someone, they need to know, but you could send them an email, but someone's going to call right after you assign that, and you're going to get distracted, and you're not going to send that email to that person. They're not even going to know it's there. But it will if you notify them. And so I'll just tell you some notifications that I get every day. I get a backup of all the proposals sent to me every day. I can do that kind of thing. I know members that do send a list of activities to someone, every day, that kind of notification. We do have some members that have a large enough staff to where when a trip is canceled, it does notify everyone those, right? But think outside the box. What do you want to be notified about? And who do you want to notify? If it's someone unrelated to whatever's going on, then that becomes a little bit more difficult. But you want to notify the account manager of a trip on something, well, that's easy. They're attached to that trip. But if you want it to be, this person at this time and this person this time, then we have to build a little bit more. We have to get you to tell us who it's supposed to be, because the system is not psychic, so they don't really have that information. Which kind of brings us to automations. And this is the one that I think most people don't understand that they can do.
Right.
And an example of an automation, by the way, that happens that you don't know happens. The first one is copying proposals. So that's an actual automation. What it does is the new system says, we're going to copy this proposal and we're going to create a new trip for you to attach it to. And it copies all the things that it needs to and reattaches all those things so that you didn't have to do it. Another good example of an automation would be when you're updating a price and you use the update price button. That's an automation. And that's all done by you triggering the event, right? So you could you do it by button push, or you can do it by doing something in the system. Mm-hmm. Another example is sending a trip to another app. So when you change the trip to commitment and then push it to the operations, like to Trip Manager, that's pushing it to another app. You've taken a whole bunch of information, and without having to rewrite it, you've created what used to be that file folder that you dragged around from room to room in your office. It's creating that file for you by the press of a button that says send to operations. That is an example of an automation. A third-party connection with our partner groups, Book My Group, and things like that. Those are all automations that occur. So you can do it by a button click or some other trigger. For instance, here's an example. Let's say you're in Trip Manager, you got a trip, you're about halfway through booking this trip, and they cancel. And how many times has this happened to you? You forgot to unbook everybody, right? You've put it into cancel, then you just totally forgot about it, but you've booked some things already. And now you're having to pay for those because you didn't tell them otherwise. So what you can do is you could set up an automation to where when you set the trip to cancel, it will take all the other trip products and put them in a to cancel status. And it's going to want you to go through each one and cancel them until they say canceled. And then you know that your trip has been canceled, right? And you're like, yeah, do that, right? You can't just call us up and say, do that. You need to call us up with a plan in mind about how you want it to work and the ramifications of what it is you're asking it to do. So for instance, we can automate, I was going to say, yeah, we can automate adding a standard product to a trip. You have something that goes on every trip and you're tired of adding it as a separate line item. Tell us. We'll make sure that every time you create a new proposal, that product gets added. Whether it's some sort of gift that you want added, whether it's a gratuity that you always want added, whether it's just a line that you get tired of adding into every trip. And even if you just have it into most trips, right? So if you say, well, I don't do it on every trip, but most trips get a hotel check-in, right? You're tired of adding in the words check into hotel. You just want it there. You add it to the schedule. 95% of your trips have a hotel check-in. Add it. And on the ones that don't, your day trips, just delete it. Just delete it out, right?
It's always faster to delete that one thing than to add it on every trip.
Absolutely.
If you're manually adding something like that each time, it takes much more time than deleting it from the few trips that you're not going to use it on.
That's exactly right. I mean, and if there's something that you always forget, right? You always add, let's say you always add a tour director, right? You can automate that if you only have one price.
Yep.
You could automate. There's just a myriad of things that you could do, and you can automate adding a product, like when you add a motor coach product and you always want to add the loading motor coach. See, some people, when they add a motor coach product, use that product for the language. So they have the motor coach and then they just override the language to say, pick up at, wherever you're being picked up at, which is a great use of that. Some people have that product and it sits above the itinerary and they add another itinerary line that says pick up from your school or your organization. But see, that would be the exact kind of problem where you say, I would love it for always to say, pick up at school. That works only when you're going to a school. So just remember that when you do an adult trip, that's not going to work anymore. So you'd have to delete it out, or you'd have to say something more generic or something like that. That's the kind of thought process that you need to go through before you say, I'd like this automation to happen. Does it always need to say the same thing? What can I say where it will say the same thing? Or can I just delete it out, right? You have to ask yourself those questions. And you can, so that would be by another trigger. You've added the proposal, this comes in. But you can also do it by button click when, sometimes we have emails that send out by a button click, right? Obviously by another trigger is the easiest. It's just simply the easiest way to go, but you can do it by a button click as well. And so when you sit down with your staff, or sometimes it's just you and maybe one other person, or maybe just you, sit down and say, how do I want in the perfect world? And I can't tell you that the perfect world is what we can provide. That is not what I am saying. There may be a lot of automations that you come up with that we really have to think through. We have to stop and go, well, we can't do that. And here's the reason why. And we'll tell you why. We're transparent. We will say, this is the reason why we can't do this. But we also want to think about it. But if you have the perfect process by what goes on, then what would that be? And how would that look? And how would that work? And we want to try to make some of those things happen for you, because the idea of the system is to create an easier solution. A lot of people forget that we cannot, when we do demos or trainings, a lot of time, we find that a lot of clients have to get over the idea that we cannot beat your muscle memory until you learn new muscle memory, right? Yeah. I hear a lot of, well, I can do this faster on a Excel spreadsheet. I'm sure you can today, but I promise you that I can build a trip and send it all the way through the system faster than you can on a spreadsheet and a Word document, because I'm not having to rewrite everything every time. So yeah, it might take me a little bit longer here. It's going to take me so much less time on the other end. And when I've got my muscle memory down, building a trip is very, very fast. And you're doing because you're doing the document and the Excel spreadsheet at the same time. So automations, it's the same thing. If you think about how you'd like it to be automated, you have to think beyond what you're doing now. into the perfect scenario, I guess. And that's how we're going to bring you into the business without boundaries arena, I guess.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what I have on automations. Jim, you got a favorite automation you like, or a favorite notification, or?
Oh, I kind of went through the one that I like. I like in Sales Manager in adding in an activity anytime that something needs to be done. And also if you're working with a team of people and you need to keep them apprised of the activities that are going on or what's happening with a client, you can add activities for them. You can add notifications for them. So that way they're contacted each and every time one of those things happens. So I love dealing with it. And it's funny because I don't know if all of our member companies know, but we use GTO as well as a sales and marketing and accounting tool for GTO. So, I mean, we're using the system ourselves. And so there are so many times that I go in after trade shows and I add activities. So that way I can, like you were saying, I can go in and I can follow up with people to make sure that I'm hitting everybody that I told I was going to be contacting and following up and sending information. And you can, it can be as specific as you want it to be too. You can set up a generic notification to say contact this person, but you can also go in and you can add specific things that you need to contact them about. And I know for me that helps because when you're dealing with a lot of people, you may not remember 3 days down the line exactly what it was that you were supposed to contact them with. So you can put all of that information in. And we often talk about alleviating the pain points of group travel planning and dealing with activities and notifications and automations. Those are very specific ways that we can make life easier and we can alleviate those pain points because things will happen from within the system automatically. You don't have to remember to do it each and every time. We can set it up so that way it happens and it's done. And again, getting you closer to business without boundaries. And if you want to work on the beach, then you can. So
That's true enough. When you mentioned our own background applications, it reminds me that an automation that I really like, because it really helps me, is when we bring on a new member company. Right, it's a big deal for us, and we press a button and it creates the company in our company manager and transfers the logo over. I don't have to retype all that stuff out.
yeah,
I don't have to move the logo or anything. It creates those. But it also creates the series, the checklist that I have to do to onboard every person in every company onto the system. And it creates all the training tasks for the support helmsman to do as well. All
yeah.
that's done, one button click, done. I have all that stuff and I don't have to rewrite it out. I don't have to photocopy a checklist and bring it out and start checking them off. And then, because what's great is, as I'm doing this, and you've even mentioned it, Jim, as I'm doing it, there's a ticker at the top that shows what percent complete I am with that process. And so you can look and go, well, he's only 30% complete on this. It's not time yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been great. Another one that we do is, I know we have notifications and stuff that happen in the tour director app. As you
Yeah.
select tour directors, there are notifications that go out to those people, so that you don't have to remember to send that. Oh my gosh, did I actually reach out to them? You're right.
Right.
It shows up in their portal. It sends them an email. So those kind of things that we have in the background of ours, are really helpful to us as well.
Yeah.
So we utilize these things all the time.
And and there are still times that for those of you who are out there and have not talked to us about doing these for your company, don't feel bad, because there are still times that Kory and I and Keith and everybody will get together and have a discussion about what else we can automate or what else we should automate, or we'll come up with a question going, there's got to be a way that we can do this. And many times it's just a simple automation that gets put into place that makes life easier for us as well. So don't feel bad if you haven't done it, because we still go through and do the same thing all the time. As we get more people using the system as well, we have people come to us and go, is there a way?
Right.
Yeah, a lot of times there is a way. So
yeah, our automation processes are great because they're ones we want to share with people, right? So
right.
like, for instance, kudos to our guru team. They were trying to
Yes.
automate their own process better. And so when you do a request now, it creates a series of tasks for them in certain date periods, right? And it tells them to reach out. And if they don't reach out, if they do reach out, but they still get no response, there's a process by which that happens. And if they finally do get a response, then it cancels out all the other ones, all the other activities that were created for them, and moves it along. But when it finally hits, a certain amount of time, then it sends a message back to you, the member that put it in, that says, we're trying, but we're not getting any response from these people, right? It does all that automatically, saving the gurus time to actually contact the people that they need to be contacting, and not just trying to remember who it is that they've got to contact all the time.
Absolutely.
And they came up with that process because they sat down and thought about it and said, this is what we think should happen. We got it done. Yeah. And like I said, that's us. So everyone can know and understand how that automation works.
Yeah. And it's a huge time saver for them.
Yeah.
They now have more time that they can, like you said, dedicate to reaching out to the suppliers that are actually getting information back to us. So
absolutely,
it's always good. Well, Kory, thank you so much for all of this information, and thank you all for joining us today. Just a reminder that GTO Coach and Go happens every other Tuesday at 2:00 Eastern time. So make sure to join us again here for that. Also on Thursdays, we have our Destination Dispatch. Destination Dispatch returns not this Thursday, but next Thursday, April 13th at 2:00 Eastern time as well. We're going to be heading to Liverpool on the 13th. So make sure to join us for that. All of our Coach and Go segments and all of our Destination Dispatch segments live on our YouTube channel. So again, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that little notification bell so you are notified anytime that we have new content on that channel. It's great. We've got a lot of great videos and stuff. We even have our April Fool's video up there too. So for those of you who may have missed that, go to our YouTube channel.
That was a joke? I thought we were really going with that logo. I'm very upset now. Very, very upset.
Well, anyway, make sure to go check that out because it is pretty incredible. I guess incredible is a good word to use for that. So again, make sure to follow us on our social media channels as well. Kory, thanks again. And for all of you who've watched, thank you so much. If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with us. We're here to help you out. We're here to streamline this whole process for you. So don't ever hesitate to contact us. Thanks for joining and have a great day.
Thank you for watching this episode of GTO Coach and Go. We invite you to stay connected with Group Travel Odyssey on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and be sure to check out more of our media, including Destination Dispatch and the Destinations Beyond Expectations podcast. Please visit our website, grouptravelodyssey.com, where you can learn more about GTO and request a demo. Group Travel Odyssey, business without boundaries.